Hello everyone, it's Loose Canons. We're doing podcast number 8. It's me, Ruben, Patrick, and Basil.
Hello.
Hey.
And we're going to be discussing 1973's Flesh for Frankenstein, directed by Paul Morrissey. So what did everyone think? Positive, negative, neutral?
I give it. I loved it. It was weird and crazy and gross, and I loved it.
It was definitely all of those things. Sorry guys, I'm getting over a sickness and I can't stop coughing. I liked it. This is the third movie directed by Paul Morrissey that I've seen.
What were the other two?
He has Blood for Dracula and Trash. And he has a nice, weird energy to him. I probably didn't pay as much attention to this movie as I should have. It's probably worth me revisiting, but I liked it. It was solid. Nothing spectacular.
I thought there were a few spectacular scenes. What did you think of it, Basil?
I had an odd reaction in that I really liked it for the first half hour or so, but then I got sort of tired of it. It felt like the movie could have been half an hour and I would have been happy with that, but that it kept going and it didn't really do anything that new with the rest of the time to me. So then I was like, okay, we're still doing this, huh? Alright, I guess I can go with that. But I admit I got a little bit bored, especially by the maybe last half hour of it. I was ready for it to be over.
I don't know where in the film structure that it fell, but I would say that probably sort of my favorite part of the movie was that you would say a typical comedy trope is mistaken identity, dating back even before Shakespeare. Patrick knows exactly what I'm going to mention. But so in the plot of this movie, there's a scientist played by Udo Kier who wants to create a new race of humans who it's not exactly clear what his goal is, but sexual liberty is definitely part of it. And so he's going to go to the brothel to find a head for his male Frankenstein character, and he chooses the wrong person, the guy who wants to be a priest. Joe D'Alessandro's.
He wants to be a monk.
Yeah, he wants to be a monk. Joe D'Alessandro's friend.
And he's probably gay. Also, that's implied, though not stated outright, in the film.
And so, normally in a comedy film, which is this is a little bit, it's a comedy horror film, hijinks ensue at this point when they mistake the identity. But in this film, they chop his head off.
Hijinks.
And it was, I don't know if it was a commentary on the trope, or the idea that mistaken identity could actually be really dangerous in most situations.
But
it was very abrupt and it worked really well.
Udo Kier's inability to have any sort of inner monologue in this movie is great too, because he says literally everything that he thinks out loud. And I love when he sees, I think there's a part where they're in the brothel and the prostitutes are scared by a lizard that's on the floor or something like that, and they come running out, and he sees the two prostitutes with the one guy who's the wrong guy, and he's like, 2 women with 1 man, what an animal he must be, or something like that. His reaction to seeing that is it's hilarious.
Building off that, there was a really funny scene almost directly after that it made me laugh really hard, which was that when Udo Kier is finishing up the two, he's talking about his master plan, and it's just this weird, like, really long expository dialogue of just, like, laying out exactly what he's doing to his assistant, but, like, it's completely unnecessary, but he's just really focused on what this huge plan is gonna be and can't stop explaining it.
He's so focused on the fact that, like, the medical profession is going to try and steal his creations, and that he doesn't want it to be a huge step forward for them. He wants it to be a huge step forward for himself. Those are really funny.
But it felt like someone, like Paul Morrissey, had read a book on, like, how to write a screenplay and was just like, I'm gonna do the opposite of that for this scene. I'm gonna have every line be, like, completely unnecessary and make no sense. That's something a real person would say.
And I love that this is basically the the family in the castle is basically just this incestuous relationship. It's like the brother and the sister have had children together, and so they have these, you know, strange mute children who just walk around the castle and just creep on everybody, and apparently know how to spy on every scene in the castle, because every scene it seems like there's a cutaway to, like, the children, like, watching from behind a, you know, like a a broken out part on the wall or the windows or something.
Another thing that I like about this movie is that I feel like a lot of different sexual attitudes are represented. So we've got the one person who wants to be a monk, and then we've got Joe D'Alessandro who can't get enough, and then this sort of aristocratic wife who's, like, obsessed with beauty. And then Udo Kier, who's, like, completely into his work.
Literally.
And, I don't know. I mean, I guess I feel that way about all of Paul Morrissey's films, and that they're very sort of, like, there's a lot of different attitudes, I guess, in them, all represented concurrently. I mean, you know, this is a horror comedy, so I don't think he really gets behind any of the attitudes. There's no, like, winner, I guess. But you sort of get to see them all interact with each other, which is nice. It's something that I like, as when you have a lot of different types of people just, you know, sort of all together in one film.
Yeah.
I felt that sort of I felt that sort of extended into, I was just looking at my notes, and the sort of acting and I don't know, talking styles of the people felt very conglomerated together. Like that the sexual animal guy has this very thick New York accent that he doesn't try to hide at all, and other people are trying on, like, different Germanic-ish sounding accents, and then Udo Kier is just talking the way he normally does.
Yeah, I was initially, like, kind of dreading sitting through this movie until I found out that Udo Kier was in it. And then I was like, oh my god, I really do want to see this now, because I don't know why, but for some reason I just really like Udo Kier, like his acting style and just the way that he looks. Also, it's just like I'm just like, yeah, I want to see more of that guy on screen all the time. And it's weird because I don't think I've ever seen a movie where he had, like, a starring role. He's just like this bit player that I see from time to time, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's Udo Kier, he's back.
Those giant eyeballs.
Yeah.
Both Udo Kier and Joe D'Alessandro are in Blood for Dracula as well, playing similar kind of roles. I think Morrissey just likes how different they are from each other, and sort of putting them on screen together at the same time and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I was going to say, Basil, to your point about the third act kind of losing you, I felt like it was probably going to do that for me at some point. Like, I was thinking that it was going to be like, okay, it's going to be like Possession, where I, you know, was kind of into what was going on, and then it just takes this weird left turn. But for me, everything that happened in the third act of the film really seemed to fit what was going on before. It felt like it was logical in terms of the characters and stuff. And I love that it's just like I love that everybody's sort of fascination with sex, like all these different kinds of sex come into play. It's like the wife slash sister just really wants to fuck the Frankenstein monster, and Udo Kier's going crazy because his two creations won't fuck each other, and I also like that he gets literally, Udo Kier gets literally penetrated by his creation after earlier in the film penetrating one of his creations via the organs. Like, he gets his stomach stabbed out just like he sort of opened up their organs too. And I don't, it seemed like there was is it supposed to be more graphic than the version that's on Netflix? Because I felt like there were a lot of scenes that looked like they were just zoomed in for some reason, and so I didn't know if there was supposed to be more graphic than that, because it didn't seem that graphic to me. Like, I could tell what was happening, but it was never like explicit like violence and stuff. Although from some of the reviews I've read of it, they say that there's a lot of like guts and gore, and I didn't see that much. I guess I'm judging that against other movies that I've seen recently that did have lots of explicit guts and gore. So I know that it's definitely implied that both the female zombie and the male zombie get their guts ripped out and die, but you never actually see the guts falling out of them. So I was wondering if maybe, because it looked like the version that was on YouTube was like a really low quality version, because I watched I'm sorry, not on YouTube, but on Netflix. The version that's on Netflix looked really low quality, and I saw a clip later on YouTube that looked like it had a much better quality to it, although it was smaller in a window, but it looked like it had it had been like remastered or something. So I didn't know if there was a discrepancy on the version that they had on Netflix on Instant.
How did you watch it, Ruben? Did you watch it on Netflix also?
Yeah, and all of the Paul Morrissey films I've watched on Netflix, and all of them have had a similar quality look. So I assumed that was how they were. It could have been a mistake.
I mean, it's hard for me to say without seeing the version you're talking about, but I did. I mean, in the version that I watched, the zombie like kind of rips open his own stomach, the male zombie, at the end to kill himself. Yeah. And there's definitely a shot of like his guts like falling out of his stomach.
Okay, yeah, because that was definitely not there in the Netflix streaming version that I watched.
Weird.
The shot of the guts actually falling out was not in there, which I thought was weird.
Netflix has in the past been known for censoring.
Yeah, I'm disappointed about that now. I felt like this. I might have liked the movie even more if I had seen it that way. More gross. Because so the scene in which he is actually like having sex with the female zombie on the table, do you actually see that happening? Because it looked like the version that I had was like zoomed in so that all you could see was his head in the frame, and then he was talking to his assistant who was standing, like just in front of the table.
That must have been some kind of artificial zoom, because the way it was shot on mine, he was definitely like laying on top of her body and like very obviously like humping her stomach. Like, I mean, you can't see anything because he's wearing that big lab coat, but it's still very much
you can actually see his whole body. Okay, yeah. Netflix, damn you. Damn you.
We wanted to see some necrophilia.
Yeah, you're censoring my smut. Come on. No, yeah, I definitely got that impression when I was watching it. I was like, this looks like it's been artificially zoomed. Like, a lot of the shots look just really grainy, bad quality. And I was like, this can't be because it doesn't, I mean, the film's not, it's not HD quality film, but it's still, it has a certain quality to it throughout. And then
film is better quality than HD quality.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I'm saying though is that it's
but I mean, as far as we know, at least as far as I know, the film hasn't been released on Blu-ray or anything, so you're still watching a DVD version.
Yeah. And
Um,
it just seemed like those scenes really stuck out. It was like a sore thumb. I was like, this looks really bad. What is going on here, Netflix? So yeah, there were some scenes that were artificially zoomed, and I'm pretty disappointed about that now, Netflix. I'm going to have to seek out a regular version of this film now, one that has not been chopped and screwed.
That's what you get for doing things the legal way.
God damn it, Netflix. God damn it.
I've been rewarded
This is why
for
people.
my piracy.
Damn it, Netflix. This is why people pirate movies.
Yes, this is the reason. No other reasons.
This is it.
It's because
it's
they
right
want
here.
the best and
It's because we want to see
scummy.
we want to see our
Fresh for
necrophilia.
fun.
There's no such thing as poverty or, inequity or
That's right.
just plain,
Yeah,
vice
laziness.
in this world. Just people wanting to see good
That's right.
films
That's exactly
as the directors intended them.
right. Yep. That's it.
So
It's artistic integrity.
Did they also show or not show the gallbladder hanging off the edge of the pike when Udo Kier is stabbed?
Oh no, I didn't see that either. God
You could just
damn
go
it.
through the whole movie and talk about what things you
Gotta
missed
fuck
out
the
on.
gallbladder.
That could be the whole podcast.
See, and honestly, I don't remember him saying that line, and that's like a really famous line in the movie. Like, it's like, to know death, you have to fuck life in the gallbladder, I think is what the line is. And I don't remember him saying that. Like, I looked it up on YouTube later, and I watched that clip of him saying it, but I don't remember it being in the Netflix version. So
Maybe because it wouldn't make sense because it didn't show him
So
like
lost.
holding
Yeah.
it in his hand first,
yeah,
which was so gross. Like
yeah.
that was actually something I was gonna write down on my thing. Is like when he's opening her up and reaching inside her, he's like massaging her organs with this really like erotic like joy of it. Just like, oh yeah, can't wait to be. And it's really disturbing. And I was like,
That's what I liked about this film. Is it just did not shy away from that sort of like disturbing goofiness at all, because it was done in a way that wasn't like, you could tell that they weren't taking it seriously, but at the same time I felt like the actors were taking it seriously, and so it was the right kind of disconnect where it was like, I get that the director thinks that this is funny. Like, the director does not think that this is supposed to be 100% serious, but the actors are playing it like it's 100% serious, and that makes it funny. Like, that's what comedy should be.
Isn't that true of a lot of Kubrick films as well?
I was
ironic detachment.
The actors taking it more seriously than the director.
I don't think anybody took a film more seriously than Stanley Kubrick, honestly.
Really? Because he tortured his actors.
I know. Not in like a joking way either. Not like a joke torture way.
Oh.
Like in an
Joke
actual
torture.
torturing way.
Fun torture.
Not fun torture either. Not the good torture. Bad torture.
Mean-spirited
Where's the good
sociopathic
torture? Did anyone
Go
have
ahead.
anything to say about the sister wife and like her speeches at the beginning of the film about beauty?
I felt like if it was trying some kind of class commentary, it was very broad and not that effective because it seemed very silly. Like, these dirty urchins, everything's so dirty.
But then she liked him later.
Yeah,
She
that's
wanted
true.
him.
She is slumming.
Is that the tea glass from your famous tea movie? Is that a different glass that you're sipping from?
I don't know. No, I used a glass for better visual effect in that movie.
Yeah, I can see it's not clear now. I thought it was.
It is the same brand of tea, though.
those podcast listeners who haven't seen it yet, please check out Basil's movie about drinking tea at your nearest convenience. Go to your local Cineplex. It's attached to the Captain Phillips as the opening short film before Paul Greengrass as Captain
We'll
Phillips.
proceed it.
Plays before while everybody's getting their popcorn.
You can see Basil's movie about tea.
What did you think about the speeches at the beginning?
I don't know. It just seemed like they were important somehow, so I wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts on them. But like I said, I didn't pay very careful attention to this movie as I was watching it. If you see Blood for Dracula, it's very similar. And I could tell from the beginning that it was very similar. And I was like, oh, okay. This is just like Blood for Dracula. And so I looked up at moments that I was like, oh, someone's head got cut off. And whatnot. But for the most part, I kind of felt like I had seen it before, so no judgment on this movie. I like it, and I like Blood for Dracula, but it's kind of a retread, so I thought maybe people would pay closer attention, might be able to say something more about it.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the shot of when he holds up the head and talks about how great it is? And the blood just keeps draining out of it forever.
Yes.
Yeah,
He has like a weird expression on his decapitated head's face, right?
Yeah.
Like shock or something. If I remember correctly, he's like.
And Udoki's like, "This is perfect. This is the perfect head." And blood is just continually draining out of it.
Yeah. Everything about
for
that.
me, it's the iconic scene from the film.
Everything about that scene was so great, though. Like I love the part where he sees there's somebody else walking with him. He's like, "Oh, there's somebody with him. Oh, somebody's very drunk." It's very hard to see what happens to him because it's in like complete darkness. But it looks like Otto just like bumps him in the back of the head with like a hammer or an axe or whatever it is that he has. And it's just one of those like those movie things where somebody barely gets hit with something and then they go down like a ton of bricks. And then it looks like he just like runs straight into the head chompers scissors there. Yeah. He's just like, oh, and then his head's right in the chompers, and it's just like like garden shears. He's just pruning the head. Just prune a little head.
If you remove the head, the body will die.
I did like to kind of shift gears. I did like a lot of the use of space, especially in the beginning. Like, there's a part in the laboratory where it starts on a really close shot of him like pulling the woman's body out of the tank, and like the camera slowly like pulls back and sort of zooms out, and it just keeps doing that for a really long time until the laboratory is revealed to be like this enormous, like 40-foot tall, like expansive thing. Like, I thought it was going to stop, that shot was going to stop much sooner than it did, and it made me laugh. And they did a similar thing with the dinner table. Like, when the servant is dropping off the food, she walks for like a huge amount of time before she gets to Udokir at the other side of the table.
And I liked those dinner table scenes were fun because of the kind of, I don't know, like the verbal sparring of Udokir and who was the
woman with
Monique
no eyebrows?
Monique Van Voren is her name. Her name is Kathleen in the movie.
Does she normally have no eyebrows, or was that a character choice?
Honestly, she doesn't even have a picture on IMDb, so I'm not sure. But I liked their sort of back and forth arguing, kind of bickering about things, and how the children were just sort of silent the whole time, just like, yeah, this is how it goes every day for them. And I also love the ending. I was like, oh, I hope they don't just like cut him down and it's happily ever after. Like, when they started picking up the scalpels, I was like, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah, the ending was the next thing I was going to bring up. I wanted to ask whether or not you guys had any interpretation of it.
I couldn't hear you.
I wanted to know whether or not you had any interpretation of the ending of the children's actions.
I mean, I just thought it was because, of the conditioning of the craziness that they'd seen around them. Like, basically, I guess they'd watched their father just cutting up bodies repeatedly, and you see them at the beginning, too, where they're kind of doing the, Wednesday Addams thing, where they've got the doll, and they're just chopping its head off in a guillotine, and it's you're just like, these kids are messed up from the beginning. Basically, they've been, I guess, kind of scarred by seeing the horrific experiments that their father's been doing, and now they're like, we've got a helpless victim here. Let's try to do some experimenting on a real human being. And
it's sort of implied through dialogue in a couple parts of the movie that their dad, like Udo Kier and his sister / wife's dad, was also like doing some kind of horrible things to people, and possibly a doctor. So I guess could also be implying that this is like the family business, and maybe in a way they're small versions of Udo Kier and his sister, kind of just continuing the tradition of horrible incest and mutilation.
It was both a horror and a comedy ending.
Yeah. It literally embodied both, I guess, standards. It wasn't like a comedy that had horror elements or a horror movie that had funny points. It was both both genres kind of down the line, which is pretty good, I'd have to say. It shows that, Paul Morrissey definitely knew what he was doing, so you can't criticize him for, I guess, lack of talent or anything, because I think it might be easy for people to watch this and think, oh man, this is just like a crappy movie. It's like, oh man, the acting is so bad and it's so hammy. But I definitely think it's supposed to be that way. It's directed that way. And,
I don't think that he thinks it's hammy. I think he thinks that it's good, which is fine by me.
No, that's what I'm saying though. Like,
I think he likes it. I don't think he's like,
I'm
going to cast some people who aren't good actors for this movie.
No,
I think he's like, this is the type of acting I like.
No, I don't think that he thinks that it's bad acting. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is how he wants it to be. It's deliberately this way.
Yeah.
Do you think his enjoyment
bad?
Right. Do you think his enjoyment of it is ironic? And I don't know.
It doesn't seem like it is.
No.
It doesn't feel. Yeah.
I don't think it's like, to use a modern comparison, I don't think it's like Machete, which is an intentionally bad movie with intentionally hammy acting and intentionally goofy lines. I think this is legitimately what he thinks is a good film. And that's, that's the type of, if you want to call it a bad film, that's the type of bad film that I generally like. Like, I feel like Troll 2, I don't think the guy who made it thought it was a bad film. I think
I definitely don't think that.
I think he thinks I made the best film that I could.
Yeah, I don't think that Paul Morrissey thinks this is a bad movie. I think he thinks I definitely think he thinks it's a good movie, and it's a certain style that people, I think, can misconstrue as being bad because it's so kind of over the top. It's kind of hammy, but it definitely works. It's almost kind of operatic in a way. It's everything is stated very clearly, and you know exactly what everybody's motivation is for everything, and there's not you don't have to sort of pick up on subtexts. Although there are subtexts, they're not the same as what the character, they're not like character subtext. The characters themselves are just sort of like spelling everything out for you, and so it's like, in that way, it's like an opera. And in fact, I think this would make a very good opera. If someone wanted to.
Suggestion a lot.
I think there was something else I was watching recently that I thought that would make a great opera. I can't remember what it was.
13 going on 30.
I was going to ask, just because of, what prompted my question and sort of wondering while I was watching the movie was, I mean, there's certain staginess to certain aspects of it, like the part when they're in bed and lying. The wife and New
Joe
York
D'Alessandro?
accented guy. I'm not gonna.
Joe D'Alessandro was the actor.
He's posed very much in a kind of comical parody of like Michelangelo painting, and I guess just the association with Andy Warhol, who is sort of known for both like embracing cheesy like consumer aspects of culture, but also sort of ironically detaching himself from them and laughing at them at the same time. And I was wondering whether anyone felt like that might be going on here, but obviously not.
I think that Paul Morrissey is one of many directors who is legitimately obsessed with Joe D'Alessandro's body. So I'm not sure whether or not it was definitely intended to be comical. Like, he might literally think that to compare Joe D'Alessandro to God is not out of line. There's a whole like litany of films that Joe D'Alessandro is in that are the like closest thing you could say to like men being objectified, where he's just like constantly like his chest and shoulders are just shot in a way where like you don't think of him as a person, you just think of him as a sex object.
Yeah, Basil, to what you were saying, I think that I think that the way that Andy Warhol looks at pop culture is I find it that it walks that line almost perfectly. Like I don't ever feel like he's liking the things that he likes ironically, but I think he's playing on people's expectations of, you know, sort of liking those consumer items as irony. Because I think Andy Warhol genuinely loved consumer goods. Like, he genuinely loved all of the stuff that he pretended to love. He just played on people's idea that he was doing it as a joke, like he was doing it ironically. And so, you know, that's, I think, probably the same thing is going on here, where the movie is kind of playing on people's expectation that, you know, this kind of, you know, camp is ironic, whereas Paul Morrissey just really enjoys it. Like, he really thinks that that is what makes a good film. And so it's it's playing on the expectations of people, you know, who come into it with, I guess, a preconceived notion of what is a good movie and what's a bad movie.
I buy it. That explanation sounds plausible.
Plausible.
Thumbs up.
could be, maybe.
I mean, that's just to like throw at you what we've been talking about in psychology recently. Like, there's no such thing as like proving anything in this world. There's like good correlation and like strong correlation and weak correlation. So I think what Basil is saying is good correlation, which means there, you know, there's a fair chance that there's a link between the two things. It's not weak. If it was weak correlation, you throw it out.
Without Paul Morrissey actually being here to say, yeah, that sounds right. That was pretty much what was going through my head.
I wonder if directors ever do that. Or if they're just like, that's an interesting theory, and they just nod their heads. Because, you know, I mean, I feel like it's probably good for their art/business to not really definitively say.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that in a way that strikes me as sort of obnoxiously pretentious. Martin Scorsese is extremely reluctant to talk about his own movies, like even when they come up in interview type things. Like, I remember him and Roger Ebert did like a top 10 of the decade for the 90s, and Goodfellas was on Roger Ebert's list, and Martin Scorsese was like, yeah, and then like did not say anything about the film at all, like quickly moved on to his pick.
That's especially meaningful because he's so erudite and thoughtful when it comes to talking about other people's movies.
Right.
Like, I've heard Spielberg talk about movies, and I'm kind of like, well, I'm glad that he makes them, because I can't really talk about them that well. I mean, unless he's just, been bullshitting for like 40 years. But, when he talks about movies, he just is like, I really like them. He sounds kind of like exactly how you would stereotypically expect Spielberg to act, which is like an excited child. Whereas like Scorsese, sounds like a graduate film student from NYU or Columbia or something, talking about films, like very precise, very thoughtful. So if he's not talking about his films, yeah, it's definitely like super intentional.
And it was,
I don't remember if I told you, but there was a really long video with Siskel and Ebert, Spielberg, Lucas, and Scorsese talking about the future of movies made in the 80s, and it was really good. I enjoyed it. You should watch it if you have like a spare hour sometime.
That sounds pretty cool, actually.
That sounds like something I would love to watch. I like watching documentaries about movies that I've already seen, generally.
I mean, I guess it was a documentary. It was just, Siskel and Ebert interviewing the three of them, for their show, basically an hour's worth of interviews.
I've actually, I've gone through their kind of like, I think there's a site that has archives of their old, their old shows that they did where they were like the best of the year roundups or whatever. And it was interesting to go back and see, what was sort of the critical favorites around the times that they did it, like the years that they did it, because not having lived through those years, you kind of can't get a sense of what the film landscape was like when in the time, like at the time. And so it's kind of cool to go back and sort of get a feel for what the landscape was like back then. But I thought that they actually championed some really interesting movies back in their day. Siskel and Ebert. I kind of enjoyed
I don't know exactly when it happened, but Siskel was like hugely avant-garde and interesting, and then at some point in the line he thought something like Crash was a really great movie, where he just changed. But like he was like, shit stirrer-upper for a long time.
That was kind of part of the point of creating the show, right?
Siskel was brought in to be the like steady hand, the one who he's the one who gave Die Hard like one of the best movies of the year, that he had ever seen. Like he was much more the toe the line type critic, and Ebert was the like us, the one who had like crazier opinions and thoughts. And then at some point he became very, much more standard.
Yeah, I don't know why. I remember going back and watching their 1985 best of year, and they both had Purple Rain on their list, and I was like, that's kind of an interesting choice. Like Purple Rain's not really one of those films that you think of as like, universally critically adored. I was like, a Prince movie on your list, huh? That's interesting. So that was one of the ones that just like struck me as just like, wow, that's a weird pick for them. It's one that you wouldn't think of, I guess, like the mainstream critics as being that high on.
Yeah, I remember one of the things that impressed me a lot back in the day, when I was first reading Ebert's stuff, even though I disagreed with him at the time, I feel like I would agree with him more. But he gave Blue Velvet 1.5 stars, which, considering how many critics were falling over themselves to like talk about how great it was, it's a pretty ballsy thing to get out there and do, like in that time period. I feel like that could never happen in this day and age.
He was still kind of ballsy later in life, but in a very different way. Like when he said that Final Fantasy movie was one of the best movies of the year. The future of filmmaking.
Really? The Spirits Within. That's wow.
He loved The Spirits Within.
I saw that movie in the theater when it came out. I'll have to go back and watch that movie.
Armand White ballsy move then. What's his name? Jonathan Rosenbaum ballsy move.
Right.
Yeah. I get the impression that Roger Ebert didn't really like David Lynch all that much, because I remember his review for The Elephant Man was like, this movie is terrible. Like, what the hell is going on?
If I remember correctly, Roger Ebert only likes his first movie, the one that he made.
Eraserhead?
Yeah,
And Mulholland Drive.
Oh, he liked
Mulholland Drive was like a comeback for him as far as Lynch was concerned.
Because I remember reading... Oh, no, maybe it was Rosenbaum where I read the thing where he said that after Eraserhead, essentially each movie has been slightly worse than the last. That was his opinion of David Lynch.
Yeah, that was Rosenbaum.
That Eraserhead was promising, and that promise was never met at all. Yeah, it was in that Twin Peaks thing you linked me.
Yeah.
He was like, Eraserhead was really personal and interesting, and basically he's, become full of himself and completely not at all personal since then.
Right, diluting what was interesting to reach wider and wider audiences. I think was another thing that he said about it.
I liked him in Louis, though, a lot. David Lynch was in Louis for 3 episodes.
Yes,
I think
he
you've
was.
seen it, Patrick. And to sort of, not really, but to sort of bring it back to the topic at hand, I always kind of wonder about mainstream filmmakers and what their tastes run, because, we know, obviously, that Quentin Tarantino has a very wide breadth of taste in film, but I'm curious what films Steven Spielberg likes. If you were to sit down with Steven Spielberg and watch Flesh for Frankenstein, if he would just be like, what is this, why was this made? Or if he would understand the value of it.
It's a good question. I was gonna say, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I was gonna say Spielberg would probably be critiquing all the shots and stuff and the uses of lighting and things like that.
What I was going to say is that one thing, Rotten Tomatoes for a while has been doing a 5 faves thing where they interview an actor or director or someone and ask them what their 5 favorite movies are and to talk about it. And I've found that overwhelmingly when they interview directors say Lawrence of Arabia is one of their 5. For some reason that is a movie that all directors who are 40 plus just love that movie.
I will say that I like that movie, and there's a shot early in that movie that I think that a lot of people just go crazy for. It's the shot where he's holding the match, he's blows out the match, and as soon as he blows that out, it's a smash cut to desert. And it's that's a director's wet dream. It's yes, epic, amazing. It's everything contained in that one little smash cut. And it's just when I saw that too, I was a little bit oh man, that's a good cut.
Lawrence of Arabia is the movie that I was most shushed at while watching.
Most shushed at.
I saw it at an old theater. It was right before the DVD was released, and it was they had remastered it for a print. It was touring the U.S. and it was playing in Birmingham for a week, and then I went with a friend to go see it. And I don't know whether or not I would still like it. We both loved it at the time, but we also made fun of it a lot while we were watching it. And after the 3rd or 4th joke, we started getting shushed by this woman. But it was too funny. We couldn't stop joking, so she kept shushing us. But to no avail on her part. I feel bad now because as an adult I hate that. But it was really worth making fun of.
I feel it's a movie I should
really
go back
technically
and
impressive.
Watch at some point because the one time that I watched it was a VHS copy that my mom had, and I accidentally put the wrong tape in because it was on 2 tapes. And I watched half an hour of the movie, and I was wow, they're really just getting right into this. No opening or no just straight into action.
I didn't even see a cast or who made this.
It's so weird that movie is because I guess I've gotten the same impression without looking at lists, is that it's very much a filmmaker's film, and yet David Lean is not necessarily considered in the pantheon of great directors or anything. He hasn't made anything else that's considered as highly.
Bridge on the River Kwai.
Brief Encounter.
Brief Encounter is not considered as highly. Bridge on the River Kwai, I admit.
I think Brief Encounter is considered pretty highly.
Lawrence of Arabia is considered top 10. I don't know if Brief Encounter would make most people's top 500. I mean, there was a Criterion, right?
Yeah, but
yeah, definitely.
Criterion is, I mean, when they released it, it was when they were more known for like picking famous directors and then picking their less known work.
Yeah.
And it's not really a movie people think of when they think of David Lean because it's not epic.
I saw a movie of his about like a T-shirt or something that was pretty good. It was
I was going to say Dr. Zhivago was also David Lean. So.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm just mistaken.
That's 3 movies that he had that won Best Picture. It's pretty. I think they all won Best Picture. Yeah.
I couldn't tell you, but I'm surprised because I don't know. I don't feel like he's that well thought of in general. But maybe I think he's
more well thought of by the British directors. Probably he's more well thought of in England.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like that's a movie that people really like, but then I feel like Andrew Sarris kind of like took a stand and was like, David Lean's not that good, and that a lot of critical stuff has kind of followed that a little bit.
I can't think of a good comparison, but I guess for some reason I always thought of him as a director where people are like, he did a workman's job, like he takes good material and he doesn't screw it up. But I don't know why I get that impression. But that's always the impression I've had of David Lean.
I don't think any David Lean movies are on Rosenbaum's top 1,000. I've never read anything about his feelings on him, but I feel like him and Sarris run the same in that regard.
I think, though, that once someone actually made, like, their pantheon, it was a Cahiers de Cinema person, I can't remember who it was, made their sort of pantheon of great directors, and I think David Lean made their list, actually, though. I know that Nicholas Ray and Orson Welles were on the list. I'm pretty sure Renoir too.
Right.
Howard Hawks. Guys love Nicholas Ray.
Yeah, it looks like most of David Lean's other movies are just like incredibly British movies. Like he made a version of Great Expectations, and he made a version of Oliver Twist, and then he made another movie called Passage to India. I think is his last movie. So it was. He's a very British director. I think maybe is why he's not thought of as well by the. I guess American film community.
I don't know who directed The English Patient, but it's kind of like if someone just directed The English Patient like 30 times in their career. They just kept making The English Patient over and over again.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely no more Britishy sounding movie title than Passage to India.
Got just the right level of implied racism.
And they don't live there.
Just racist enough so that it is racist, but just not racist enough that you feel awkward calling them out on it.
I was going to say I was surprised to find that that Flesh for Frankenstein has a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow, awesome.
I was thinking that maybe that's due to like a dearth of reviews on it, because it didn't look like there were that many reviews on it. It looks like it's probably not one that most film critics go in and have a say on, because it's probably not one that gets re-released a lot for critics to see. I assume that
more of the critics who see it are the type of people who would be more interested in it. That if it were somehow forced, if someone was like with Killer of Sheep when it got re-released, and so a lot more people saw it than originally had seen it. If something like that happened with Flesh for Frankenstein, that rating would go down. I can't imagine your mainstream critic liking it.
Isn't it on Criterion though? Am I wrong about that?
I don't know.
I feel like it might be.
I don't know. I guess we should mention that also there's an alternate. The alternate title of the film is Andy Warhol's Frankenstein. So I guess this one's Andy Warhol's Frankenstein, and the Blood for Dracula is also Andy Warhol's Dracula. I guess
to highlight his popularity.
I guess so.
Yeah, part of his. Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula are both Criterion.
Yeah.
He has it does expand his popularity, but he had like a collective or something, Andy Warhol, like of artists.
Yeah, the warehouse
working for. Yeah.
Yeah, so the factory. factory.
I think that's what that's
Whatever.
The warehouse.
Warehouse.
The warehouse is the dance club in Chicago where house music started.
Hey, do you guys want to hear Paul Morrissey's top 10? Criterion asked him his top 10 films. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
The Bank, Dick, Under the Volcano, Summertime, which is directed by David Lane.
I was gonna say, yeah.
The Earrings of Madame De, The Scarlet Empress, The White Sheik, The Thief of Baghdad, The Leopard, The Third Man, and Richard III.
Which Richard III?
Lawrence Olivier's.
Lawrence Olivier's. Makes sense. So. The
The
Thief of
Nazi
Baghdad's
one.
one. Yeah, The Thief of Baghdad's a film that I'm interested to see, just because it was included in this documentary I watched called The Story of Film, and they were pretty high on basically like it being sort of the prime example of what an adventure film was in the silent era. So I just wanted to see it because it looked interesting.
His taste run pretty highbrow for someone who.
They all seemed very, based on my limited knowledge of them, very actorly, like Shakespearean. Obviously, his number one was a literal Shakespeare adaptation, but a lot of very sort of gesticulating,
Right.
intense, emoting.
The White
acting.
Sheik is definitely one of the weirdest Fellini movies that I've seen in terms of before he was as overtly weird. It's more just like a really strange attempt at a comedy that didn't work very well for me, but Fellini.
But yeah, apparently there are only 11 critical reviews of Flesh for Frankenstein on Rotten Tomatoes, so that's probably why the score is so high. And I should add that the audience review of it is 50%. So. People definitely don't know what to make of it.
Cool.
So more people need to see this movie. More people should see Flesh for Frankenstein. Even if they don't like it, I feel like they should see it.
If people are going to see one Paul Morrissey movie, I think they should see Trash.
I need to watch
good.
Trash, and I need to watch Blood for Dracula also.
Trash is the one where I feel like his aesthetic jives the best. There's an enjoyable sort of disconnect of his, I think Paul Morrissey's lowbrow sensibilities with shooting in castles and stuff was sort of highbrow setting. But Trash is about a heroin addict, and it is a lot more, suits up a lot better with the way that his films look and feel.
Is it a heroin addict in a castle? Or
No, just in a... No, strangely enough, Joe D'Alessandro is not playing someone where his accent really doesn't fit whatsoever. He's actually just playing a New Yorker.
I was going to say that the early shots in the movie of the countryside and stuff reminded me of Radley Metzger's Licorice Quartet, and made me wonder if there's some specific place in Europe where all the filmmakers decided to go in the 70s to shoot.
It probably was. I think it was they said this was shot Romania or somewhere.
I don't know if
about
decided would be the right verb there. I'm guessing there's probably a place to shoot films that's really cheap, and all the directors who don't have a lot of money
Right.
shoot their movies there.
But who also want a place that looks like a castle. Believable medieval era.
Well, Licorice Quartet doesn't take place in medieval times. It's just
Right.
modern people living in a castle for some reason.
Which almost made me wish that that's what this was. Just Frankenstein in the 70s, but still in a castle.
Yeah, I think it's probably in Italy somewhere. As I know that a lot of films used to shoot in Italy because the production costs were so low there, and there were a lot of good places to shoot. I know all the, that's basically where spaghetti westerns came from, because it was so cheap to go and shoot in Italy instead of shooting in the desert in America.
And from Sergio Leone's deep love of spaghetti.
Yeah. Because of Italy's deep love of spaghetti. Because of all those scenes of Clint Eastwood eating spaghetti, the spaghetti westerns. This is good spaghetti.
Had to eat 100 plates of spaghetti.
All right, do we have anything else to say about Flesh for Frankenstein? Or
I'm good.
If we digressed enough, talk about David Lynch and whatnot.
Roger Ebert and David Lean.
I mean, I thought those discussions were more interesting than our Flesh for Frankenstein discussion, so I'm glad they happened.
I was into all of it.
Yeah, I think we definitely had. Yeah, I think we all pretty much liked it.
People aren't coming into this podcast looking for like extremely professional, like streamlined, perfect podcasts. I think they appreciate our 25-minute side comments.
Right. I was gonna say, I feel like in general that's. I mean, I could be wrong, but when I listen to podcasts, I'm more interested in like stuff that feels kind of organic and just coming out, and rather than trying to create like a narrowed space or
like a neat little segment.
Right.
I feel like I listen to a lot of podcasts that are really like neatly segmented. I don't know. I've stopped listening to most of those podcasts. So I started listening to a lot more where it's just like one or two people in a room like talking. The best ones are with comedians, obviously, because they're actually funny people, and obviously we're not professionally funny. So
we're not paid to talk to people for a living.
We're not paid to be funny. We're incidentally funny.
We're amateur funnies.
If we're funny, it's an accident.
Did you ever get any drinks or tips when you did a stand-up, Basil? Because you could claim to be professionally funny.
No, I feel like the days of bars even giving out drink tickets are long gone to the open mic world. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes if you graduate from open mics...
I wasn't even thinking of the bar. I was thinking someone being like, hey, good set, here's a drink.
Oh.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't think that you would get drink tickets unless you were on the bill.
I feel like the bars don't even give free drinks to the people on the bill for the most part, unless it's a show people are paying for, which happens almost never.
Oh, well.
I don't know how people are funny. I don't understand comedy.
Someone on Twitter told me that he's writing something for Adult Swim with some other Twitter people, and if I ever wanted to be on TV, to just hit him up. I was like, okay.
Take you up on that. I want to be on TV, but I'm not going to be funny. I refuse to be funny on TV.
He was commenting on my I made a joke about weird Twitter sitcom or something on Facebook. He sent me a message. He was like, I'm actually sort of doing this. And I was like, good luck with that. That sounds great. I mean, he's actually funny, so unlike the people who I was making fun of, he's like legitimately funny, so it could actually be good. I'm like, and it was sort of like built off his original joke. Mine was less good. His original joke was like, in like 10 years we're gonna start seeing weird Twitter sitcoms, things like Hitler's Dad, Ghost Cop.
Yeah, Ghost Cop, Hitler's Dad. I remember that one. Oh, weird Twitter. We love you. I guess we shouldn't call it that because that's a label that's been placed on it by society.
It's toxic and problematic.
It's horrible
to call it that.
God damn it! I always called it good Twitter because it was good.
It was for a little while.
Remember when good Twitter was good?
And then it basically at some point became like Family Guy Twitter that wasn't actually Family Guy. Like 95% of the jokes that were really popular were essentially like not quite good enough to get onto Family Guy.
Yeah, like my jokes.
Your jokes were way better than the ones that became huge. I mean, did you see the one that everyone makes fun of now? Because it's so bad and became really huge.
What is the one that people make fun of now? I haven't seen this.
It's like, I can't remember all the words exactly, but basically cops pulled over a guy and the cop says, why are you smoking those two huge joints? And he turns to the camera and goes, because I'm double jointed. And then it says cop starts breakdancing, and that was literally so that was why in mine I said weird Twitter where writer's room starts breakdancing, because I was referencing that.
Writer's room starts breakdancing. Yeah,
that one became huge, and then it got even bigger because Will Arnett retweeted it and recorded himself saying it.
What, wow. the one about being double jointed?
Yes, he recorded himself saying it, and I was like, oh my god, this just goes further to prove that Will Arnett was the least funny member of Arrested Development.
Oh man.
And yet still funnier than Amy Poehler's current boyfriend.
Who's Amy Poehler's current boyfriend?
Nick Kroll.
No, I think I disagree. I think Nick Kroll's funnier than Will Arnett.
Really?
Yeah.
I've seen Nick Kroll be funny in podcasts, but I've never seen him be funny in anything else.
Do you remember the episode of Parks and Rec where Anne is looking for a donor for her future potential baby? She's looking for a baby daddy, and she's interviewing like guys in town, and she's interviewing
and he's the douche.
Yeah.
The douche.
But there's a scene with Amy Poehler where she's talking to him, and she's like saying that he's stupid, and like he points out that he has like a degree, like a master's in like linguistics from like some really nice place or stuff, and he's like, but this was just a way to make money. And then he's like, you have to always wonder with a character like this, it started off as parody, and he's like it started off as satire, but now I don't really know where it is anymore, and it's like, have I given into the system? Like he was going on like about this, and I was like, is this just about Dick Kroll? Like, I was like, buried in this episode of Parks and Rec is Nick Kroll explaining all of his comedy. I was like,
it's just
this
a
makes me kind of like him. Where he was just like, I'm this really smart guy who figured out the easiest way for me to get famous and rich, and then took it, and then like it was supposed to be satire, but now I don't think it's being interpreted that way, but I haven't backed off of it.
Yeah, I'm just okay with being legitimately offensive and people laughing at that.
Sort of like the anti-Chappelle.
All right, I think we're done talking about Flesh for Frankenstein. like 15 minutes ago we were.
That's
like
okay.
30 minutes ago.
All right, well, we can continue talking after we stop recording.
Okay, it was.
Also, I have to go to the bathroom. So
thanks for listening to the podcast, everyone. It's Ruben, Patrick, and Basil with Canons. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.